Ya. Buenas tardes.
Good afternoon. We're going to begin. We're running a little late, but we will try and catch up and finish on time. My name is Ricardo Alarcón. I'm in charge of the plant health service from the Andalusian agriculture, fishery and environmental services. And my colleagues from the Catalan agricultural department have asked me to moderate, so here I am. I'll do my best. We're going to have two blocks in the round table here. Well, first of all, as in the other sessions in Smart Fruits, what we're going to have, we're going to be looking at the challenges for IPM in olive pests. We've got 5 speakers, and as I've said, we can split these into 2 separate blocks, if you like. First of all, we're going to be hearing from 2 researchers, and then we're going to have 3 speakers who are going to be talking to us about the practical application of IPM knowledge in the field. So I've got Professor Bruno Bagnoli to my left. He was born in Castelfiorentino in Florence some time ago, quite a long time ago. He's a graduate from the University of Florence. Basically, he's a researcher at the agricultural engineering department in Florence, and working in Florence. He's been retired since 2012, but he remains very busy with teaching, postgraduate teaching, especially as far as viticulture is concerned. Then we've got Professor Urbano Fuentes Guerra. Jose Maria, he's the director of the master's degree in plant health at the University of Seville. He's an agricultural engineer, and he is a research fellow in integrated weed management, and they're pests too, after all. Next, on his left, we have Jordi Mateo. He works for the Plant Health Service in Tarragona for Livestock, Fisheries, Food and Natural Environment and Agriculture Ministry. He's qualified in environmental management, technical agricultural engineer, degree in enology, postgraduate certificate in international cooperation, and since 2002 he's been working in the regional government of Catalonia's Department of Agriculture. He works basically in olive fly control. Then to his left we have Joan Josep Duatis. Now he is from the Baixebre Montsià region. He's got a degree in biology, a specialty in botany, and he works very intensely in this area of Tarragona, dealing with the olive fly. And last but certainly not least, and I think it's been a very good idea of the organization, I'd like to congratulate them, because we need to hear particularly and especially from the people who are actually working on the ground, people who are working in plant health on the ground. And we're talking about farmers. So we're very lucky today, because I know you're busy. We don't hear a lot from you. You're busy actually in the fields. Antoni Galceran is a professional farmer, primarily grows olive trees and almond trees. and he's always been involved in cooperatives, following his forebears. And basically his main crop is Arbequina olives within the protected denomination of origin Siurana. He's member of the cooperative Agricola Secció de Crèdit La Palma in that area. So that's our speakers. So now I'd like to start straight away with Professor Bagnoli. He's going to be giving a presentation which is written in English, but he's going to be speaking in Italian. So if you need interpretation, it's going to be translated into English and into Spanish. So you have 20 minutes. Please be very strict in time management. I'm sorry, one more thing. The idea here is for the speakers to give their presentations, and at the end there'll be about half an hour for you all to put any questions, any doubts you may have, any observations, and we hope that we'll have a very fruitful debate. Thank you. Good morning. Good morning to you all. Before all else, I would very much like to thank the organizers for inviting me along to this very important event here. And I'd also very much like to thank the organizers of this particular room, Albert Maggio, who has allowed me to give my presentation in Italian. So I'm very grateful for that. So, it really is a great pleasure for me to be able to come and talk about the olive fly here in Spain among world-famous entomologists have really laid down so much and done so much to move forward in this field of research. The olive fruit fly has been known since ancient times for the damage it causes to olive production. This damage can be seen in two ways. First of all, direct damage on the fruits, on the olives, through the dropping of the fruit, and indirect damage on the soil, because it actually affects the quality of the oil itself. The olive fruit fly was described for the first time, in fact, as Musca oleae by Pietro Rossi just a few months before the Russian entomologist Gmelin did. Now, a couple of centuries later, the Australian researcher Drew transformed it from Dacus to Bactrocera genus. And today, this species, this key pest, is defined generically as Bactrocera Daculus and species Oleae. A problem which is still of enormous interest to evolutionists is to see really where this species began life. This is still the subject of debate. Some believe it comes from Africa, others believe it comes from Asia, northern India perhaps, but it most certainly is not from the Mediterranean basin. So once olives were domesticated, it settled and really made itself felt in the agricultural field in the Mediterranean. Now, the olive fly has an holometabolous development. It has a larva which is very different from the adult, of course, and as you know, it goes an adult, egg, larva, first, second, and third instars, the pupa, inside the pupary, and then back to the adult. Now, the fly itself can develop in most of the Mediterranean areas, and it can develop 2 to 4 generations per year. It can spend a long time. It has the ideal temperature conditions for a long time, and if it does find the right conditions, it can even produce up to 7 generations a year. Now, for a long time, it's been considered by many authors as a kind of homodynamic species. That's to say, it can have several generations coming one after another without interruption. In fact, in just a few years ago, Afiraspi from the University of Pisa observed that this species has a reproductive diapause in the spring. So there's actually a break in the maturing of the eggs. Now, one of the important and fundamental characteristics of the life cycle and presence of the olive fly is as follows. The pupae, which overwinter, then emerge in February, March. And there's an initial peak in trapping. If you use traps with pheromones or other types of traps to catch adults, you can see that if they can find olives that have not been picked, so if they're still on the trees from the previous year, October to December, if they find them on the plant, then they are able to oviposit inside these remaining olives. And that is a kind of springboard which allows them to multiply, and the population, of course, goes up. After this period, the fly appears to just fade away. You can't seem to catch any. And this is known as the blank period. And the reason is because it's the reproductive period. When it reappears is at the end of June or the start of July. At the end of the reproductive diapause, the fly finds the olives in what we call a receptive state, and oviposition can take place, of course, by the females. Now, several times we've seen in Tuscany that there's a direct relationship between the amount of catches of adults in early spring and the size of catch in early summer. So we're talking about February, March, and you can see the effect on receptive olives end of June, start of July. So this has been more and more interpreted as a condition which could strategically be used to try and combat the presence of these adults, either using tract and kill or sugar-coated poisonous bait. And that's very important for an overall approach to deal with this. Now, just a few years ago, the University of Pisa, with Professor Crovetti, defined the fundamental parameters linked to the link between temperature and the development in days. So the lower thermal threshold and the constant development in degrees a day. That's all of the degrees a day that allow full development from egg to adult is 379 degrees. Now, we can see the speed of development does vary according to the temperature. But what you can do in different areas of the Mediterranean basin is you can do what we call a sort of risk map. Now, a risk map means that on these thermal constants of the lower development thresholds, what you can do is have an idea of the basis of generations that the species can generate in a given year. Now, the adults. Each species has what you call a strategic instar or period. We find it's in its strategic development phase, really, in the adults. Now, the reason is because their activity takes place as long as they have temperatures over 15 degrees. But this goes on for months and months. We are not able to rear and keep these flies alive for more than 3 or 4 days in the lab. But in the wild, we see that adults can live up to 6 or even 9 months. Now, apart from this, the insect can also migrate. It can move over areas up to the winter. The fly tends to move from the flatlands uphill as it looks for olives in which to oviposit at the start of the summer, and then there's a reverse movement from the hills down to the flatlands, of course, as the olives ripen. Now, another important characteristic of the olive fly, particularly concerning adults, is the fact that, like in other Diphthera and the Tephriti, they have special treatment with special relationship with bacteria, particularly those present on the phyloplane. Bacteria are present in the digestive, or are taken through the esophageal bulb, down the malphigian tube, into the digestive system, and the last track of the gut, which is common with the oviduct, where the eggs are waiting, and these bacteria can actually colonize the outside of these eggs, so that when the larvae emerge from the eggs, they ingest the bacteria, and this allows the young larvae to hydrolyze proteins present mainly in green olives. This is a very important element that's of enormous interest to researchers. Reproductive behavior. I don't have much time to go through this in great detail, but basically the pheromone is emitted by the females to attract the males, emission of volatiles and sounds by males, competition among the males associated with hierarchies of dominance, then coupling, search of the host by the females, the host obviously, and then oviposition. And here, pheromones are very important, especially 1,7-dioxaspira 5,5 emitted by females, known as the sex pheromone, and the males, and then say 9-tricosine, emitted by males, and only recently discovered as a pheromone only emitted by males, such a short-range attractant of females. Now, natural resistance, natural predators, entomorphagous species that prey on the pupa, that eats the pupae. Then the egg predators, Lasioptera, Belasiana, and then the larval ectoparasitoids that actually eat them from the outside. Capelma, Spignaglio, Eratoma, Sirapatis, larva pupal endoparasitoids, finally. It's a braconid, and it actually develops inside the larva itself, inside its body. Here's some images of some of these parasitoids. All these parasitoids don't really play a very big role in containing the fly populations. The role of natural enemies controlling the olive fly varies greatly in time and space, but in the Mediterranean basin, biotic factors play an insufficient role. There's basically
settentrionali italiane
a series in many olive growing regions of central and northern Italy. The factors in 2007, especially in 2014, led to a population explosion which was absolutely incredible and extensive damage to the olive production, caused by high temperatures in autumn winter, low temperature and high relative humidity in the summer. We had frequent rains in the summer, particularly in July, and another two elements which were the presence of a large number of olives, unharvested olives from the previous year. The previous year, a lot were left on the trees, and that's where the first generation really kicked off. And 2014 was the year where olive production was very limited. So, because the more flies you have, the more damage you get, the less well the olives do. So monitoring, IPM, requires appropriate monitoring based on adult captures and pre-imaginal assessment. So the resources, the methods used, to catch the adults and rear them and study them and assess them in terms of oviposition, of egg laying. We saw in the past that between catches, adults and infestation, in statistical terms, the variability of infestation is rarely explained by the variability in catches. But if you compare the developments of catches and infestations, you can see there's a correlation there. Predictive models. We would need at least an hour to be able to go into this, and we don't have that time today. But allow me just to hover over two aspects, because I know that certain colleagues, not only Italians, but particularly Italians, have tried to identify the index to estimate at a 10-day the period of 10 days, how many flies there will be on the basis of catches of females and temperature. So phenological approach and the agrometeorological temperature and other methods to see at several months distance exactly what the populations will be. So there are certain approaches concerning defense, and we want to look at defense, how we defend ourselves against this pest. Detection of characteristics of resistance or tolerance to fly attacks on the many varieties in the Mediterranean basin has long been a topic of great interest. We're looking at molecular and genetic techniques to look at the many different variations or varieties rather of olive trees in the Mediterranean. There's a very interesting study being carried out here because there are limits, and I'm sure we'll be able to look at those in our debate afterwards. But as far as cultural defense of olive production are concerned, early harvest of olives is absolutely fundamental. Harvesting those, because as we've already said, the ancients already realized, and Napoleon, in fact, understood this. He had an edict, as did Ferdinand II of Bourbon, of the two Sicilies. They realized the importance of this, and they actually laid it down in the rules. Right from the start of the 20th century to today, biological control has been used. Psittalia concolor is a braconid wasp, and this has been used extensively, but we've never really managed to get very consolidated or robust results from the use of this. So it's a very important issue, and I'm sure we'll be able to pick this up at the end. Economic thresholds. The critical densities. In Italy, we consider two orders of magnitude of economic thresholds or intervention thresholds. First of all, in preventive treatment, using a poisoned bait, that's 1 to 2%, and then 7 to 14% of curative defense. Classic controls using dimethoate, phosmet, imidacloprid. This is very effective, but there's also the problem of negative aspects. Toxicological environmental risks there are quite high. So dimethoate and other sort of phosphates, and a lot of people don't want to hear about this anymore because they think it's an obsolete method. And we've got looking at these approaches using poisoned bait. This is an approach where they use these phosphoric esters, and many olive producing or olive oil producing areas in Europe are starting to use these eco traps, which allow for organic production. Preventive adulticide devices use attract and kill devices, which are able to attract and to kill the adults. And as far as the aspects are concerned and the preventing damage to the environment is concerned, of course, you don't have to spray any insecticides on the olives. That's the upside. But the downside is that the efficacy is very, very low, and almost always linked to population density. If it's a fairly small population, then it's valid. You can see that, but only if it's sprayed over a very wide, if it's used over a very wide area. Otherwise, you don't really see any results. Spinter fly. In organic olive growing, defense and control of flies through repeated treatments with this method, which is based on the use of natural bacterial metabolites, but it's limited by the fact that it's not very selective, the dependence of the eggs. So you need to use a great number of treatments. So I'm going to pass straight over other less important methods and look at two approaches. Treatments, direct treatments with copper salts, and still clay approaches where we're using a surround approach. So there's a very low environmental impact, but they're not always all that effective, high cost, high dosage, and high water consumption. So what I can say is that considering the areas in which research needs to be carried out involve natural biological control, semiochemicals, symbiotic bacteria, and sterile insect technique, SIT. For the time being, we haven't really hit upon an integrated method that really satisfies these three main principles: efficacy, eco-sustainability, and cost efficiency. So we're waiting for science to make available more valid control strategies to deal with the fly, with these areas I've just mentioned. And the important thing to do is to have an increase or enhancement of agrobiodiversity, optimization of available IPM methods, because they're not available to the same degree in all the countries of the EU, and what we call area-wide pest management over a much broader area. Because that really, this area is where we can see a sort of crossover of the research institutions, regional service, technical assistance, producer associations, agrochemical companies, and of course the growers. Thank you very much indeed.